There's a thing that happens with travel advisors who are trying to attract more premium clients. They look at their website, decide it doesn't look high end enough, and they go fix that. They spend money on a redesign, they get a more elaborate layout, some animations, a complex homepage with a lot of visual production to it, and then the site still doesn't feel right. Still doesn't feel like it belongs in the same conversation as the trips they're actually booking. And the reason, the thing nobody mentioned when they were building it, is that looking expensive and feeling premium are two completely different things. In a lot of cases, the harder a site tries to look high end, the less premium it actually feels. That's what I want to get into today. So today I want to talk about something I've started calling the effort trap. The basic idea is this. In luxury contexts, and travel is a luxury context, visible effort works against you. When a design is clearly trying to impress, it reads as insecurity rather than confidence. And premium clients pick up on that, even when they couldn't tell you exactly what's bothering them about a site. The effort trap explains why some expensive sites feel wrong and some simple sites feel elevated. And once you see it, it changes how you think about almost every decision on your site. What to add, what to cut, what's actually doing the work. I'm Justin Hinkle, and this is the Travel Advisor Website Show. Hit subscribe. Okay, so I want you to think about the last time you were in a genuinely premium hotel. Not necessarily the most expensive one you've ever been in, just one where the moment you walked in, something felt right. The kind of place where you immediately relaxed a little. What did it look like? If you're picturing the places that really had that feeling, there's a decent chance the answer is not that much. Clean lines, good materials, nothing cheap, but nothing shouting about itself. A lot of space, nothing extra. Not a lobby crammed with furniture and art and fountains and things vying for your attention all at once. Just the right amount of everything, given room to exist. Now think about a different kind of place. One that was clearly trying to feel expensive. Lots of ornamentation, gold fixtures everywhere, big chandeliers, every surface doing something decorative. And sometimes those places are impressive in a way you notice them, but they don't always feel as good to be in. There's something a little anxious about them, like the building is working very hard to convince you of something. That's the whole distinction right there. The first kind of hotel isn't restrained because they couldn't afford more. They're restrained because the designers understood that calm is what luxury actually feels like to the people who experience it regularly. The second kind spent everything on looking expensive, and the effort is visible. And when the effort is visible, it creates the opposite of the feeling you were going for. Travel advisor websites do this constantly. Animations that announce themselves when you scroll, background videos that autoplay the second you land on the page, complex layouts with a lot of competing sections, each one trying to hold your attention. You can spend real money building something like that, and it might look impressive in a screenshot, but it doesn't feel premium. It feels effortful. And effort is kind of the wrong signal when you're trying to position yourself at a higher level. Let me be clear about the distinction I'm drawing, because I think it's easy to agree with in theory and then not actually change anything. Looking expensive is a design investment. Developer hours, custom animations, elaborate page transitions, visual complexity that signals this person spent money on this. And that stuff can look impressive. I'm not saying it's inherently bad. I'm saying it's a different thing from what most advisors are actually going for. Feeling premium is something else. It's restraint and confidence. It's the feeling you get when something is well considered, when every element on a page has a reason to be there, when nothing is fighting for attention that doesn't need to, when the whole thing communicates that deliberate decisions were made about what stays and what goes. You can get that feeling from a relatively simple design, and you can completely miss it with an elaborate one. The effort trap is the mistaken belief that those two things track together, that spending more on the design gets you more of the premium feeling. Sometimes it does. A lot of the time, it doesn't. And for travel advisors specifically, I think the path to a site that feels elevated almost never runs through making it more visually complex. The reason is the client you're actually trying to reach. Someone who regularly books luxury travel has a very calibrated sense of what premium feels like. They've stayed in those calm, restrained hotels. They know what considered looks like when they experience it. And they'll feel the difference between a site that's genuinely elevated and a site that's trying hard to look elevated, even when they couldn't explain what's off. Visible effort registers, not always consciously, but it affects how they feel about the whole thing and whether reaching out feels right. So, the goal isn't to look expensive. It's to feel calm, confident, and considered. And the path there is mostly about removing things rather than adding them. The single highest leverage thing most advisor sites can do is fix their photography, not add more of it, fix what's there. Travel is a more visual category than almost anything. The photos on your site are doing emotional work, showing people what's possible, giving them something to project themselves into. If those photos feel generic, the whole site feels generic. Doesn't matter how nice the layout is or how much the design costs. Generic stock photography registers as placeholder content, not necessarily because people are consciously thinking that's a stock photo, but because they've seen that beach, or that couple walking down that cobblestone street, or that glass of wine at sunset somewhere they can't quite place, but they feel like they've seen before. There's nothing specific about it. And specific is what creates the premium feeling. Specific says this came from somewhere real. The best photography for a travel advisor site is specific to the travel that advisor actually does. Personal photos from your own trips, even if they weren't professionally shot, they carry something stock imagery can't replicate, which is proof of presence, evidence that you've been there. An advisor who has her own photos from river cruises in Portugal, or a family safari in Kenya, or overwater bungalow she stayed in during a fam trip, those images on a site create immediate trust. They're doing a completely different thing than a photo that could have come from a search. I worked with an advisor who had this collection of photos from her own travels. Genuinely good composition, not professional, but completely real. We used them throughout the site alongside some high quality premium stock images. The combination felt authentic in a way that changed how the whole site landed. People could tell someone had actually been in those places. That specificity matters enormously for the premium feel. If you don't have great personal photos yet, and a lot of advisors don't, supplier libraries, cruise lines, hotel partners, they can often provide high quality imagery you're licensed to use. But you have to be selective about it. You're looking for photos that feel specific and real, not photos that feel like they came from a screensaver search. There's a real difference between those two things, and it's worth spending time to find it. I'd also recommend looking through premium stock image libraries like Adobe Stock. Don't feel like you can't pay for the imagery. Now, white space, or just empty space on the page, that's the most underused tool in the design kit, and the one that most directly signals premium to anyone paying attention. When a page is packed, content running directly into the next section, text filling every available inch, images crammed next to paragraphs, it creates an overwhelming feeling. Even if every individual element is attractive, the overall feeling is busy, anxious almost. There's too much competing for attention, and nothing gets to win. When there's real room between things, space around text blocks, breathing room between sections, photos given actual real estate to exist in, it slows the experience down in a good way. Each element gets a moment. Nothing is fighting. And that feeling of calm is what premium actually looks like in design. Now, luxury brands figured this out a long time ago. Go look at the websites for high-end cruise lines or premium hotel groups. What you'll notice is a lot of negative space. Big photos with short text, sections that don't rush immediately into the next thing, a stillness to the whole experience. And that stillness is doing real work. It communicates that the site isn't trying to cram everything in front of you. It's confident you'll take the time to look. For travel advisors, the tendency is to want to include everything. Every specialty, every testimonial, every photo, every detail about how the process works. And all that stuff can be genuinely useful. But how it gets laid out matters as much as what's there. Compressed together, even great content loses the premium feeling. Given room, even fairly simple content can feel elevated. That's the effort trap operating in reverse. Restraint doing more work than addition. Visual hierarchy. Now, that sounds more technical than it is. The core idea is just when someone looks at a page, where does their eye go first? And does that match what actually matters most? On a well-designed page, the answer is obvious. There's one thing that's clearly most important, usually the headline, and everything else falls into a natural order from there. Some things are bigger, some smaller, some things have more visual weight, some don't. The hierarchy communicates importance without you having to think about it. On a page without clear hierarchy, everything is competing. Heading, subheading, body text, roughly the same visual weight, roughly the same size. Nothing wins. Your eye wanders, and even if each individual piece is well written, the experience feels scattered. The effort trap version of this is making everything visually prominent because everything feels important, which ends up meaning nothing is. A site that feels premium almost always has one thing on each section that is clearly, unmistakably the most important thing, and restraint everywhere else. That clarity is a competence signal. It says the person who designed this knew what mattered and wasn't afraid to let everything else be secondary. For most advisor homepages, the quick version of this is the headline. Make it significantly larger than everything around it. Not a little larger, significantly. If someone glances at your homepage for 2 seconds, there should be zero ambiguity about what is the most important line on that page. That level of clarity makes the whole thing feel more intentional immediately. Here's the piece that doesn't come up in most design conversations, and I think it might matter more than any of the visual stuff. You can have a beautifully designed site, great photography, plenty of breathing room, clean typography, and if the copy is hesitant, the whole thing still doesn't hold. Hesitant copy sounds like, I try to help clients find travel experiences that might be right for them. Or, whether you're thinking about a cruise or an all inclusive or something else entirely, I'd love to help you figure it out. That kind of language said over a beautiful travel photograph is kind of the equivalent of wearing a perfectly tailored suit and apologizing for taking up space. The visual presentation says confidence. The words say something else. Premium copy is direct. It knows who it's for and says so. I help families plan first-time river cruises, and I've been on most of the ships I'm going to recommend. One sentence over the same beautiful photograph, and the whole feeling of the site changes. The effort trap shows up in copy too. When advisors write for everyone, covering every traveler type, hedging every claim, qualifying every specialty to make sure nobody feels excluded, the copy becomes effortful in the same way an overcrowded design does. It's trying too hard to include everything, and that trying is visible. Premium copy makes choices. It says who it's for. That specificity is a form of confidence, and it reads that way. This is also where most advisors undersell their own experience. Experienced traveler in a bio is essentially invisible. Everyone says it. I've been to Portugal 7 times, and I know which river cruise lines are worth the premium and which ones you're just paying for the name. That's specific. It's the difference between sounding qualified and sounding like you've actually been there. Those are different things, and people feel the difference. Now, typography and color. These are details, but they're details that compound. Font choices communicate more than most people realize. Generic system fonts, or fonts that were clearly whatever the website template defaulted to and nobody changed them, they feel utilitarian. Thoughtfully chosen fonts feel considered. Even if you can't quite put your finger on why, you don't need a typographer, but if your platform gives you font choices, it's worth spending real time picking 1 or 2 that feel right for the level you're positioning at, and then being completely consistent with them across every page. And consistency, honestly, matters more than the specific choice. 3 different fonts across different pages, or heading styles that don't match between sections, that inconsistency signals a site that was assembled over time rather than designed as one thing. And coherence is part of what makes a site feel considered rather than cobbled together. Color follows the same logic. Sites that feel elevated tend to have a very limited palette. A primary color, maybe a secondary, a neutral base, a consistent accent for buttons and links. That's usually all you need. Sites that feel amateur often have more colors than that. Different accent colors in different sections, backgrounds changing color unnecessarily, a general sense that color got added wherever something needed to stand out, rather than according to any system. The photography is where visual richness should come in. The rest of the design should be restrained enough to let it breathe. For advisors working toward a premium feel, I'd lean toward a neutral, muted base, whites, creams, soft grays, with one strong accent that feels elevated rather than bright. Deep navy, warm charcoal, a refined green or terracotta, something that doesn't compete with your travel photos. Because if your color choices are competing with your photography, the design is working against itself. So, what does this do to your fee conversations? There's a direct business reason to care about this beyond aesthetics, and I want to name it. When someone lands on your site before they've spoken to you, they're forming assumptions about what level of service you offer, about what working with you is like, about what it's worth. A site that feels premium calibrates those assumptions upward before any conversation happens. Advisors who've gone through a site redesign, same services, same fees, same expertise, nothing different except the website, will often tell you that the fee conversation changed afterward. Not because the fee changed, because the client walked into the call already calibrated to expect quality. The site already told them this was a premium experience, and the fee landed in that context rather than against nothing. The inverse is equally true. A site that looks like budget work creates budget expectations. And when your fee comes up, you're working against the impression that the site already made. the site undercut you before you got to say anything. So the investment in fixing the effort trap on your site isn't just an aesthetic upgrade. It affects who finds you, what they expect when they do, and how the business conversation goes. That's leverage worth thinking about. Here's how I'd actually approach looking at your own site through this lens. Start with photography. Go through every image and ask honestly, does this feel specific and real? Like it came from a genuine trip? Or does it feel like it could have come from a stock search for a couple on vacation? The generic ones need to go. Replace them with supplier images, personal travel photos, images from fam trips, premium paid stock photography, anything that has specificity to it. Then look at breathing room. Walk through each page and notice whether there's a real space between sections or whether everything runs together. If pages feel compressed, text packed up against images, sections with no real padding, adding space is often the single fastest thing you can do to change how elevated the site feels. You don't have to touch any of the content, just give it room. Then look at your homepage headline. Is it significantly larger than everything else on the page? Not a little larger, significantly. If the hierarchy isn't immediately obvious at a glance, it's not strong enough. And then read the headline itself. Is it direct, specific, or is it written for anyone who might ever visit? If there are hedge words in there like might, try, whether you're looking for, those are candidates to cut. And then look at consistency. Does the homepage feel like it belongs to the same site as your specialty pages? Does the about page match? Inconsistency is the effort trap operating at the site level. It signals something assembled rather than designed. Now, you don't have to fix all of it at once. Photography first, because it's the highest leverage thing for most advisor sites. Then breathing room, then the headline. Those three usually make a site feel noticeably more elevated without touching anything structural. The thing about the effort trap is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start noticing it everywhere, on your own site, on other advisors' sites, on the premium brands you admire. The ones that feel right are almost never the ones that spent the most. They're the ones where someone made deliberate decisions about what to include and had the confidence to leave everything else out. That's the principle worth holding on to. Premium isn't what you add. It's what you had the confidence to leave out. There's a lot more in this direction if you want to keep going. Stick around. I'm Justin Hinkle, and this is the Travel Advisor Website Show. Hit subscribe.